Welcome to another episode of the Victory Podcast, driven by Audi. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by my co-host and former USC quarterback, Cody Kessler. Cody, we are back with another preview episode, but it's a special one this week because it's the final Stanford matchup for the foreseeable future for USC and the final Pac-12 opening game. So we have to preview that, but how wild is that, Cody? It's kind of, there's some finality to all of this.
Yeah, it's a little bittersweet. You know, obviously you've known my stance on the Pac-12 the last couple months.
Yes.
Been up and down, but yeah, nonetheless, it's a great conference, you know, and the craziest part about it is how strong the conference is this year.
I know.
13-0 through week one.
Yeah.
Obviously, two of those wins are USC, but it's the last year of the Pac-12, you know, so it's going to be tough. A lot of great matchups with Stanford through the years. One of my favorite games as a Trojan was obviously that Stanford game, but the preseason's over. The preseason, I know,
quote unquote,
you give me a little bit of slack for that, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but you know, before you get to conference play, those first couple of games aren't as meaningful as, you know, league or conference play. So that's a little bit more important now. But yeah, it's the last time we'll ever have a Pac-12 opener. But what a great way to start. You know, Stanford, obviously a lot of history there between these two teams, and I'm excited for this week.
We also have to get into several thoughts that we had coming out of the Nevada game. One of them being, Cody, I just got to say, my score prediction was right on the money, 66-14, and that's the second year in a row I've gotten it on the money. So,
what did you got it last year too?
I got one game correctly, like exactly right last year. So,
wow,
I'm just saying, I got to toot my own horn here.
And I will say, yeah, you got it perfect. And the on Twitter was pretty funny too because people were. You said it first of all. You came out with.
I had to be like, did anyone see that?
And you gave me a little CC at the bottom.
Yeah.
Did you see the little? I gave the little.
Yes, it was a great.
No, but I do
got
to give you a shout on that. That's unbelievable. That is crazy. So what I would say to you is probably go buy a lottery ticket this week.
Okay.
By picking the score exactly right. But yeah, it'll be a great game to go over. But overall, it was fun to watch USC get that second win and came out firing 66 points in their second game of the year, over 600 yards of offense. Defense looked better too, so I'm excited to dive into that.
Yeah, got to thank Deuce Robinson for that one, that late touchdown.
Yeah.
Really,
he did. Yeah, that 70-yarder.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
Shouts to Deuce for helping me out there.
Miller Moss too. Got to give the quarterback a little shout out too. That was a great ball.
Of course.
Finding the open guy.
Of course. The quarterback.
I'm a little quarterback
sticking
biased,
out for the quarterbacks makes sense. Alrighty, before we jump into it, just a couple reminders. Thanks to everyone who has rated the show on their podcasting app. If you haven't done that already, it really helps grow the show and we greatly appreciate it. If you ever want to get your voice heard, you can look at our socials, Victory Pod USC, either on Twitter or Instagram. We ask for questions twice a week, either for Cody or for Dion, and we have great co-hosts. You guys have just provided such amazing info, Cody. So if you want to tap into the resource that we have here at the Victory Podcast, make sure you ask any questions that you want for these guys. They love talking to you guys. And then, Cody, we have some tickets to give away.
We do.
If you haven't been listening, we are now giving out tickets in our emoji giveaway for every home game so far. So we have to announce the two winners for two Stanford tickets each this week, which is exciting, Cody. It's been fun to see who's won the last two games, and it seems like people are pretty excited.
Yeah, we gave away our first set of tickets last week, which was awesome. The fans that won the tickets were so ecstatic, so it was really cool to see that. But yeah, we got two more this week. Pac-12 opener against Stanford at home. It's going to be a huge game, so I'm excited for that. So make sure you stay tuned to the end of the show. Don't just skip to the end of the show, please.
Well, don't give anyone a hint.
Okay, well, we know. Well, our listeners who've been faithful listeners throughout the last couple months know that it's normally at the end of the show. But we would like for you to listen to the entire show, and then you can see how you can win Stanford tickets or see who's going to win Stanford tickets, and then also some giveaways coming up in the future as well.
Yeah, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Alrighty, Cody, let's jump into our thoughts about the Nevada game. First up, we have to go with some news that broke on Tuesday. Head coach Lincoln Riley announced that Gino Quinones is out with a season-ending injury. If you remember, in the first quarter against Nevada, he went down. It looked pretty bad, Cody, from the field, just from the fact that he was down for a while. He had to get helped off the field, and then he came back with a knee brace on. So unfortunate that Gino is out. Lincoln did make it sound like he will be back for next season, even though he's a redshirt senior, and that he will be a key piece of USC's offensive line next season. But that kind of is interesting in regards to the competition at both guard spots, because we saw rotation between Emmanuel Pregnon, Alani Noah, Gino Quinones, and Jarrett Kingston, and now that's one guy out of the battle. And Riley said as much on Tuesday. He said it's up to those remaining three guys to really duke it out and see who's going to be part of that starting five.
Yeah, first and foremost, you never want to see a guy go down like that. Obviously, Gino was a big part of this offense, was competing to be a starter at that spot, was playing significant time. So that's tough for him. You know, my heart goes out to him. You never want to see that. But fortunately, like you mentioned, we'll get to see him again next year. But yeah, now it's up to the other three to step up. But the good thing about this rotation, and I guess the only positive out of this, is that you have been playing Alani Noah, you have been playing Emmanuel Pregnon and Jarrett Kingston. So these guys have gotten reps at both right and left guard. We've seen them rotate a lot. So you do have other guys there that have playing experience. It's not like Quinones was the lone starter, and now you have to play a guy who maybe isn't ready or a guy who hasn't been playing a whole lot. You have had that rotation, so that will help keep up a little bit of that consistency at the offensive line. But nonetheless, hate to see that happen to Gino. Hopefully he can get healthy and come back stronger next year.
Yeah. And I mean, to the coach's point, this is why they were doing what they were doing in the first two games. Now you don't have Alani Noah just jumping into game action against Stanford really green. At least he has some snaps under his belt where he feels confident in a game environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And he started the San Jose State game.
Exactly.
I mean, he was the first guy out there. Him and Jarrett Kingston were the first two out there. I think Quinones actually was the first guy out there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen them be interchangeable throughout the year. And again, this is where I go back with the offensive line of it is great to have multiple guys that can be starters. It's a good problem to have, but at the same time, you want to find a little bit more consistency. And this is going to kind of force Coach Riley to figure out who these guys are going to be. And we still may see all three of them rotate as the year goes on, but I think the more this season goes on, especially going into bye week and then the thick of the schedule and the later half of the season, we're going to see a little bit more consistency up front and know who that initial five is going to be in. And there may still be some rotation, but at some point you want to kind of solidify that five and have a starting unit going forward.
Something else that is notable with Gino's injury is the fact that he was technically USC's backup center to Justin Dedich.
Yeah.
Now, if you look on the depth chart, it's technically Killian O'Connor who's listed behind behind Justin, but Gino was the one who was actually taking second team backup center reps. He was a guy that they would probably put in before Killian. So now if you want to keep notes there, Killian is the one who would go in if something not putting it out there, but if something were to happen to Justin Dedich.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny you said that, and we didn't really talk about that before the show, but I noticed that during the Trojan tailgate on Saturday was that Caleb was taking snaps with Justin, and then you have the backup and the backup center taking snaps right next to them, and that was Miller Moss, obviously, and then Gino Quinones. So I didn't realize that he would be the emergency center if something did happen to Dedich, where he would fill into that spot. So yeah, you almost lose again. Like you lose a guard, and now you lose your backup center. But overall, I mean, again, it's a tough injury to see, but there are guys that have played significant time at all those positions. So I know Coach Riley and this staff feels comfortable going forward, even with how tough it is losing a guy like Gino Quinones.
Now, my main takeaway from the Nevada game, Cody, besides the fact that USC's offense is
unbelievable.
Unbelievable. What we continue to see from USC's offense and Caleb Williams is just incredible. But inside linebacker, that was such a fascinating thing. First of all, we didn't expect Mason Cobb and Eric Gentry to not be ready to go. But then the fact that Tackett Curtis gets ejected, you see both Rajon Davis and Shane Lee playing together. I thought they both played well together, considering that they didn't really have that combination practiced a lot prior to this game. And I asked Lincoln Riley about it on Tuesday. Like, did the inside linebacker play on Saturday change your mind at all as far as depth chart or counts and snap counts going forward? And he said Shane and Rajon ended up with the majority of snaps and played well and certainly made their case for why they should continue to play. And I think it was the two cleanest performances individually that we've had up until this point, which is notable. And I'll ask you about that, Cody. But he said, I like it because we've got a handful of guys in the room that can play. And I think they all know that. They're going to have to compete hard against one another to be one of the two guys that's out there for us. So now that we have tape of Shane Lee and Rajon Davis playing at inside linebacker, it's going to get interesting once everyone's healthy. I was just curious your thoughts, Cody, on that whole situation.
Yeah, first of all, Shane Lee played great. I thought he led the team in tackles, 10 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. He improved from last year, and that was an area, and it's not to call him out or put him on the spot, but he missed some tackles last year. I know he had an injury, he had the club on the hand, so that made it a little difficult, but I thought he stepped up huge this game. I thought he played so well, and especially last week only playing special teams, not getting defensive reps, to step in there this week, have 10 tackles, lead the team in tackles, and just all over the field. He looked comfortable. He looked a lot more relaxed in year 2 as opposed to last year. He looked like a leader out there, so that was awesome to see. And then Rajon Davis obviously had some big plays there, had a great tackle on Brendan Lewis, who broke the pocket, thought he was going to get down. It looked like he was going to get a first down, but Rajon Davis did a great job wrapping him up and keeping him from getting the first down. A couple missed tackles here and there, but things that he can learn from. But overall, yeah, it's going to be tough to see who that rotation is going to be going forward, especially if guys have injuries, and then when they get back healthy, do you insert them right back in? Do you leave, Lee and Davis in there because they're playing so well together? It's going to be really interesting. But overall, I thought they had a great performance on Saturday, and I think that's going to help their momentum and their confidence going forward.
Now, I feel like I've kind of spoken about my thoughts about the Nevada game with Dion. I just was curious what else you took away from Saturday's game, Cody.
Yeah, so we'll go
and
offense.
I know you're a stats guy.
I'm a stats guy.
So everyone buckle up.
Yeah, offensively through the roof. I mean, 66 points, 668 yards, total passing yards 453, total rushing yards 215 yards. Now, third down, we were only 33%, but the crazy stat about that was we were 2 of 6 on third down, right? So we had all these points, all these yards. We only had 6 third downs the entire day because of how explosive we were on first and second down. So would like to see that number go up a little bit, but it is a little bit with a grain of salt because we were so explosive. We weren't in a ton of third down situations. And then fourth down, we were 1-1 for 100%. Caleb Williams was super efficient, 18 to 24, 75% through the air, 319 yards and 5 touchdowns. And that was about halfway through the third quarter as well. So that number probably could have been a lot higher if they wanted to. But then we saw him run a little bit, something we didn't see the first game against San Jose State. Had 3 carries for 42 yards, something we got accustomed to from last year was him taking off and picking up big gains with his feet. So he had a big gain there on the ground. And then I got to give a shout out to Miller Moss, the other quarterback. Came in, played well, 7 to 10, 70%, 134 yards, 1 touchdown. And then going through the rest of the guys, Marshawn Lloyd felt like this was, I don't want to say breakout game. And again, nothing against Nevada, but it wasn't that big of an opponent. So I don't want to call it a breakout game. I think he's due for another one going forward when we get a little bit tougher opponent. But he absolutely established himself as a playmaker on this offense. 7 carries, 76 yards, averaged over 10 yards a carry on the ground, had 1 touchdown and then 2 receptions, 59 yards. That was a great play too, where he came up the middle of the field, cover 4, split the safeties too high. Caleb looked him off and threw a great throw to Marshawn Lloyd. And he made a great catch too. I mean, it was tough. He turned his hips around. The ball was a little bit behind him, spun around, caught it, and kept his momentum going forward. So him being a threat not only on the ground but on the air or through the air as well is big for this offense. And then running back Quentin Joyner is getting a lot more action than I think a lot of people were expecting early on in this season. 4 carries, 65 yards, averaged 16 yards a carry. Had a touchdown, had that huge break off a touchdown run. And then Austin Jones, a little bit surprising there, only 2 carries, 19 yards, but averaged 9.5 yards on the ground. And then when you go back to receiver, it's really everyone's playing right now. It's so tough.
14 receivers.
14. We had 12 last week against San Jose State. Now this week we've had 14 different guys that had a catch. And the question keeps becoming, who's the number 1 target? Who's going to be that number 1 guy? Who's Jordan Addison from a year ago?
Do you need the answer to that?
I mean, the early front runner for me is Taj Washington.
Yeah.
He has flashed so many times. He's been such a staple in this offense last year. And then obviously this year, 3 catches, 75 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air. But then you have Mario Williams, 4 catches, 66 yards. Brennan Rice had 3 for 37 with a touchdown. And then Zachariah Branch had the opening touchdown, which was really cool, by the way. And not to toot my own horn a little bit, but I saw that play developing. I was standing, because we stand in the end zone after the game ends.
Oh, were you next to me for this?
Well, no, I was on the opposite side, but I was standing right where Mario was going, and they ran the motion out wide, pulled the linebacker out. I saw one-on-one with Zachariah and the safety, and I put my hand. I tried to find it on the TV copy, but I put my hands up before the ball's even released, and Caleb threw a beautiful throw over the shoulder, back corner of the end zone. But yeah, so and then Michael Jackson got in the end zone as well. 1 reception, 15 yards, touchdown.
With the Michael Jackson
dance move,
incredible.
And then Deuce Robinson had that great 70-yard reception for a touchdown. So the depth is unbelievable on this offense, especially from a year ago. Is you thought, okay, they've reached their ceiling. How can they get any better? Well, now we're seeing it. They've added so many playmakers on the offensive side of the ball, not just at receiver, at running back as well. This team is so deep on the offensive side of the ball that it's so much fun to watch on Saturdays. Now, yes, there's going to get a little bit more consistency going forward. I don't think we'll see as many guys play, but everybody's making a case for themselves, from freshmen all the way up to the leaders on this football team. So overall offensive performance was great, and I can't wait to see them going forward and how guys continue to develop into their starting roles.
Especially going forward now that the defenses will continue to only get better. I'm curious how that wide receiver rotation will find itself out.
Yeah, I mean, we started out the year thinking, okay, let's go with the vets, right? Brennan Rice.
Yeah. Dorian Singer.
Dorian Singer was a guy that came up a lot. Taj Washington, Mario Williams. But now you've got Zachariah Branch making a case for himself. Deuce Robinson, who, some of his catches have come later on in the game, especially with Miller Moss, but he's absolutely a factor out there. 6'6", 225 pounds. He's a matchup nightmare that I think is going to still, even though these games get a little bit tougher, I still think we're going to see him rotating in. So it's been a lot of fun to watch. And then, like you said, Dorian Singer, a guy we just mentioned, has absolutely stated his case of why he could be a starter. And then Kyron Hudson, Another guy that I think surprised a lot of people that was listed as a starter to start the season had some flashes at times as well. And now Michael Jackson's healthy. So it sounds like I'm talking a lot, but that's because there's so much depth at that position. I mean, if you have 14 different players catch a pass in a game, it's unbelievable. I mean, it really is. And I'm not trying to toot USC's offensive horn and keep them going and hype them up because they absolutely deserve the hype. But like, that is crazy to have 14 different players not only involved in a game plan, but actually making an impact in the game and catching some passes and having some big-time plays.
Yeah. Now over to the defense. I know we talked about USC's inside linebackers, but overall, I know Nevada is kind of a step down from San Jose State. What did you evaluate from this defensive performance?
I thought it was great. I thought they played really well. A couple big plays given up in the pass game, and that was majority of the explosive plays for Nevada on offense when we were playing man-to-man, right? So we have to get better at man-to-man. Obviously, Damani Jackson gave up that big play on the first series. Yeah. Then Anthony Beavers gave up that big touchdown when he was in man-to-man later on in the game. But overall, the defense looked great. Only gave up 14 points on the day. Total yards, 360 yards. Only total passing for Nevada was 311 yards. Total rushing was 49 yards. And that was on 38 attempts. So our run defense looked amazing. They averaged 1.3 yards per carry on for Nevada, which is unbelievable. And a big part of that was how dominant our front four looks. Don't get me started yet. I'll get into that in a minute. But that is so exciting to see. From a year ago, obviously Thule was a huge part of that, but there was not a lot of depth there. From top to bottom, our front four, even front seven, looks amazing right now. So that's a huge confidence booster going into conference play. And then another big stat for us on third down, Nevada was only 5 of 19. So we held them to 26%. They had 19 attempts at third down, only converted 5 of them. So that was amazing by the entire team. It was a team effort on the defensive side of the ball, but you absolutely have to point out how good that front seven is playing right now, and more specifically how the defensive line is playing.
Yeah, the interior defensive line, we previewed all offseason, looks different. And it's making a different impact in the game so far, the last 2 games.
Yeah, and the depth there as well. So Bear Alexander is, if you're a football junkie, please go back and watch this game. Just watch him on almost every snap, right? And you don't have to watch the all 22. Just watch some of the YouTube highlights. But how ferocious he is in pass rush, how relentless he is when he's getting after the quarterback. Like, he looks like a guy with his hair on fire. Like, he's just pushing guys around, double teaming them, still getting off the double teams. And the stats aren't great in the sense of sacks and sack fumbles and all that, but he is so disruptive. And that's why it's tough for a defensive line. You can't just look at their stats, right? You can't look at, especially the interior guys. Yeah. They're not going to have numbers that jump off the stat sheet, right? But you can see how disruptive they are, how much havoc they create in the backfield, both in the run game and the pass game, and Bear Alexander is absolutely that. Keon Bars did that as well, played great. Dejon Benton had a sack as well, which was really cool to see.
Braylon Shelby?
That's exactly where I was going to go next. The play of the game for me on defense, Braylon Shelby had 3 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, and that huge sack fumble that ended up in a defensive touchdown as well. He's just so explosive off the end of the line of scrimmage, looked great. And then Jameel Muhammad as well had a great sack there early on in the game, really killed the momentum for Nevada. But it's crazy because last year it was really Thule. Now we're getting to talk about all these different guys and the depth that this D-line has that is setting us up for so much success going forward.
It's a game changer. And and you mentioned the depth. We got to hear from Braylon Shelby for the first time on Tuesday. He made his freshman media debut, and just standing there in his scrum, I was like, I cannot believe this guy is a freshman. Yeah. the size and the way that USC has recruited both out of high school and out of the portal. It's obvious, but it's game changing. And like you mentioned, the coaches have said, you can't see Bear, quote unquote, on the stat sheet. You can see him on the film. Like, he is just such a disruptor. So it's really cool to see what's at Alex Grinch's disposal this season, because he actually is generating pressure across the board and not just from Tuipolo too.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because there are games that, and Aaron Donald is a great example of that. There's games where Aaron Donald's not going to have 2 or 3 sacks, not going to have a ton of tackles for loss. But if you watch the film afterwards and see how disruptive he is and how good he is at taking on double teams and allowing one-on-ones for other guys on his team, those are the type of guys that you want on your defensive line. And USC, and I'm not comparing anybody to Aaron Donald, obviously the greatest player in the NFL in my opinion right now, both offense and defense. He's unbelievable. But we have guys that have flashes like that, and Bear Alexander jumps to mind. And 2 guys I didn't mention that are playing well as well are Anthony Lucas, Jack Sullivan. They're both having an impact, on the defensive side of the ball too. So it's been so much fun to watch. It's answered a lot of questions that we got not only on the podcast, but the coaching staff got throughout the entire offseason was how do we make this front seven better? How do we do a better job containing the quarterback, creating these negative run plays, creating these sack plays, and in the passing game? And those questions have been answered early on this season.
Alrighty, Cody, any other final thoughts about USC's defensive performance?
No, I think overall it was good. I just, the one place, and I'll say it again, I thought Kalen Bullock had a great game, did really, where I love watching him play and where he excels is playing that one high safety look where he can kind of be that center fielder and run all over the field, and he's such a great read and react player. He comes up and he's physical, but he's so good in the pass game. I love seeing him play that middle half of the field, or play that middle third of the field, work sideline to sideline, so huge shout out to him. But I also want to see going forward, and I just mentioned it, but we've got to be better in man-to-man. That's the blunt truth. It is what it is. We've got to be better at man-to-man this week against Stanford as well. Got some very good players that can create some matchup nightmares. Got some very tall receivers, a very good tight end. So I would challenge the defense this week going forward, and I'm sure Coach Grinch and this defensive staff are already on them this week in practice, but we've got to be better in man-to-man. Your front seven can be great. Your front four can be great. But if we can't hold up coverage in the back end, especially against some of these tougher opponents, it is going to hurt us in the long run.
Something Grinch had mentioned last year was that he didn't feel comfortable putting his defense in man-to-man situations sometime, or man-to-man coverage. Is that the same case this year? Like, is it comparable? Is it worse last year, worse this year? I just feel like, is it one of those things where now that the front seven is improved, our eyes go more to the fact that the secondary maybe isn't where it needs to be?
Yeah, that's exactly the point that I was about to make is our front seven looked great, right? Our run defense looked great. The front four, the pass rush, everything looked great. And we played well in the secondary. This isn't, I'm being a little harsh right now. This isn't me trying to point out anybody or single out anybody, but the only big plays that we gave up on Saturday were when we were in man-to-man, some of those deep balls that were thrown over the top, some of those third downs where we had a guy break out and we lost a little bit of leverage in man-to-man coverage. So there's a little bit more of a light shed on those situations because those were the big plays we gave up. But overall, I thought we played great from top to bottom on defense. That's just something I was emphasizing because of the big explosive plays that we gave up on Saturday. And it's something as we go against these tougher teams that you'd like to see a little bit cleaner early on, especially when you play these lesser opponents, so that when the schedule does get tougher, we have no question marks there and we know that we can play great man-to-man coverage.
No, that makes sense. Alrighty, Cody, before we jump into previewing USC's matchup with Stanford, just want to give a thanks to Audi. What if there was a portal to the future? Enter the fully electric Audi Q4 e-tron with an advanced touch screen infotainment system. The future awaits. And also thanks to Ralph's. At Ralph's, everyone wins when it comes to saving big, because when you order online through the Ralph's app, you get the same great prices, deals, and rewards on pickup or delivery that you do in store. So no matter where you shop, how you shop, you always save big at Ralph's. Ralph's, fresh for everyone, fight on. You made that read last week, Cody. And
I'll do another one.
Do you want to?
Yeah.
That's the harder read.
Oh, yeah. No, that, yeah.
So I was going to say, I might just give you the harder read again.
We'll see. Yeah,
going forward.
We'll see.
Alrighty, it's time to jump into the Stanford preview. First of all, I'm very excited for this preview, one, because we actually have game tape of the 2023 Stanford Cardinal to watch.
It made my job a lot easier this week.
I'm sure it did. And also just because I feel like we've come to know what a quote-unquote Stanford team is the last decade or so with Harbaugh and then Shaw. It's a different guy at the helm. It's really interesting. Yeah. So, Cody, start us off. I know you like to start with the coaching staff. Who's at the helm for this year? Yeah,
so their head coach and actually head coach, offensive coordinator, and quarterback coach is Troy Taylor. This is his first year at Stanford. A year ago, Stanford 2022 record, and like I said, new coaching staff, new players. They were 3-9, only 1-8 in conference play. Their only win in the Pac-12 was against Arizona State. So a team that's hungry this year, especially going into this Pac-12 opener. They want to turn this program around. But going back to Troy Taylor, he was at Sacramento State most recently. He was the head coach and offensive coordinator there from 2019 to 2022. And then before that, he was the Utah offensive coordinator and QB coach from 2017 to 2018. Has been coaching since 1994, so a ton of experience there. Yeah, he's been
longer than I've been alive.
Same for me. No, actually, I would have been 1 year old when he started. So, but yeah, very successful coach. He coached back at Cal way back in 1996, 1999. So a lot of experience in the Pac-12. Was very successful at Sacramento State, and a big part of that is how good he is as a play caller. That was a huge reason why he got the Stanford job. Last year, Sacramento State averaged 42.9 points per game, had 256 passing yards a game, and 243 rushing yards a game. So a very balanced offensive scheme that he runs. And they were 12-1 a year ago, so he's got a lot to prove this year and a chip on his shoulder, and he's looking to get Stanford back to where they were and what we're used to seeing Stanford from years past.
Yeah.
Now, going to the defensive side of the ball, and like I mentioned, no offensive coordinator. Troy Taylor does it all on the offensive side of the ball. So defensive coordinator is Bobby April III. This is also his first season
What a name.
at Stanford. Yeah, and I'll get into that. Some USC fans may recognize that name, and I'll tell you why in a second. Ton of coaching experience both in the NFL and at the college level. He coached in the NFL from 2011 to 2016, and then most recently he coached linebackers at Wisconsin from 2018 to 2022. This is his first time, though, being a defensive coordinator. So this is his first run at it, and we'll see. This is obviously going to be his first Pac-12 opponent, a bigger game than what they played last week at Hawaii. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays this USC offense. And then now back to the USC Trojan side of it. So his dad was Bobby April Jr., was a very, very successful special teams coordinator, coached for over 40 years, both at the NFL and the college level. But Trojan fans may remember that name, Bobby April Jr., because he was the secondary coach and the kicking coach here at USC from 1987 to 1990 under head coach Larry Smith.
Wow.
So a little fun fact.
There's always a Trojan connection
somewhere.
That's my fun.
There really is. And the cool part about that is when I got to the NFL, that's when I really noticed it, how deep the Trojan family runs, is because when I got to the league, whether it was Cleveland, Jacksonville, Philly, New England, there was always someone, whether on the coaching staff, a QC, the front office, that would walk by and say, hey, fight on, or a player that had been at USC. So it's really cool to see that. But that's my fun fact for the week for Stanford coaching staff, is that the defense coordinator, Bobby April, his dad coached at USC from 87 to 90.
Look at that. Now, okay, I actually was a nerd and stayed up to watch Stanford versus Hawaii last week. I was really curious what the Stanford team was going to look like. And I got to be honest, the Twitter memes made it sound like Stanford was going to be this like high school team on wheels. That was not what we saw at all. And I was like, Twitter led me astray. That's my own fault for believing Twitter. But everyone made it sound like with the turnover and with a new staff, this Stanford team would be nothing to really get worried about. But I was like, this is a substantial team. And granted, it's against Hawaii. But I was just curious what your film review revealed, Cody.
Yeah, and Stanford always has good players, right? Now, they were outside of the top 50 in recruiting, so I know they'd like to be a little bit better there. But overall, they have very good players both offensively and defensively. And we'll start with the offense. Now we have stats from this year, so we don't have to go back to 2022.
Yay.
I can compare it to the rest of the country. But for my fans out there that are numbers people, I like to read out the stats. Total points, obviously, in the first game. This is just going off of one game, 37 points per game, which is 47th in the country. Total yards, 406 yards, 63rd in the country. Passing yards, they had 248, which is 60th in the country. And then total rushing yards, they were at 158, which is 61st in the country. Third down conversion, they were right at 50%, which is pretty good on the offensive side of the ball. And then fourth down conversion was 0%. They didn't have any fourth down attempts last week. Now, going into the key players, this is where this team is a little bit different look than what we're used to seeing at Stanford. Their quarterback, Ashton Daniels, 6'2", 215 pounds, a sophomore. Last week against Hawaii was 25 of 36, 248 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And he also had 11 carries for 42 yards. Now, these carries weren't the pocket breaking down, I'm taking off and running. They will run quarterback design runs, and there were multiple of them throughout the game. Like they like to get the snap, let the running back be an extra blocker, and he just takes off and go. They'll have quarterback sweep. They'll have quarterback power. They love to let him run the football. Very physical kid. He loves to be a downhill runner. He will absolutely lower his shoulder and try to pick up extra yards.
That's part of the reason I was, surprised watching Stanford versus Hawaii is I was just kind of expecting to a certain degree the Stanford we know, not a mobile quarterback. And Alex Grinch said as much on Tuesday. He was like, every quarterback in this day and age has some level of a mobile element. Like, it's just not something that's rare anymore. So it's just crazy to see that even with Stanford.
Yeah, and the game's changing, right? It's not the prototypical 6'5", 230-pound quarterback that sits back there and is a pocket passer. We're seeing a lot more of, and I don't want to say shorter quarterbacks. Obviously, there's still the height difference will change throughout the country, but there's a lot more mobile quarterbacks. And it's so much, in my opinion, it's so much better to be a dual threat quarterback in today's day and age because you have both the passing and running ability, which makes it a nightmare for opposing defensive coordinators. But going to the running backs for Stanford, their lead back is Casey Filkins, 5'11", 206 pounds. He is the senior. He had 6 carries for 67 yards, averaged over 11 yards a carry on Saturday. And their other running back is Ryan Butler, had 8 carries for 30 yards and averaged 3 yards on the ground. Now, a big part of their passing offense, and so far through one game, really their only part of their passing offense is tight end Benjamin Urasek. 9 receptions, 138 yards, and 1 touchdown. He's 6'4", 242 pounds. He's a senior. And a fun fact here, obviously I'm a Trojan fan, but I got to show a little love. He is from Bakersfield, so shout out to my hometown.
I have a fun fact about him, too, if you watch the broadcast. His grandpa is the founder of the Baby Carrot.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, wow.
I thought you were going to roast me for that fun fact, but I'm glad you're amazed.
Bakersfield is huge for agriculture, right?
Oh, okay.
So
look at that.
Pistachio farming,
Tag
carrot
teaming
farming, all that,
facts.
the baby carrots, all that. So that's a fun fact.
Thank you.
And then there are other 2 guys that were effective in the pass game. Wide receiver John Humphreys, going to be difficult in man-to-man coverage. He's 6'5", 200 pounds. He's a senior. It's going to be interesting to see what DB will follow him around on Saturday. He had 3 receptions, 29 yards, and a touchdown. And their other receiver was Alec Ayaminor.
Okay.
I apologize if I say that wrong. I tried to practice the pronunciation. He's 6'2", 210 pounds. He's from Canada, actually, so a little fun fact there. But he's a sophomore. He had 3 receptions for 27 yards. But overall, that's where the similarities show up for Stanford a little bit, is in the pass game. We're used to seeing these tall wide receivers, these tall tight ends. They use multiple tight end set, but they also use a lot of spread as well, and they like to spread a ball around. But the biggest guy to key on is Eure in their passing game.
I was about to say, I was watching the game, and I was putting my Cody hat on, and I was like, that is a red dot guy right there, Eure, especially given how USC struggled last season with containing those tall, big-bodied tight ends.
Yeah, and that's my biggest question mark for this game is who's going to cover him, right? Are we going to have Jalen Smith cover him? Are we going to bring Christian Roland Wallace in, who's a little bit taller, have him cover him? Are we going to try to use one of our linebackers to cover him? It's going to be interesting to see how Coach Grinch game plans this week, especially when we play man-to-man. But yeah, my 2 red dot guys are quarterback Ashton Daniels, and the other one is the tight end, obviously, Benjamin Eure. So it's going to be interesting to see how we play them defensively, but it's going to be a great challenge for this defense, and I can't wait to see how Alex Grinch game plans this week.
What I don't understand is that, for the most part, is that USC's favored by 30 points. But I feel
Is it really?
Yeah. The last time I checked, they're favored by 30 points. But I feel like this offense is pretty powerful to a certain degree.
Yeah, and I guess you got to take that with a grain of salt because we are so explosive on the offensive side of the ball, and Stanford has struggled in years past, and their game was against Hawaii, and again, nothing against him, just a lesser opponent, so you expect to see the outcome that you did. But yeah, offensively, this is not the same Stanford that we're used to seeing. They are very unique on offense. They take their base game plan, their base offense is an air raid type of offense, if you will. A lot of spread, a lot of shotgun. They'll get an empty a lot too. They'll use a lot of wide receiver sets. It's not a ton of 1, 2, 3 tight end sets, power running, then play action like we're used to seeing. They will absolutely spread the ball around and allow Daniels to sit back there, pick you apart, and then he'll take off and run as well. But where they're unique and why Troy Taylor is so good as a play caller and which makes it a little bit scary going against him is they use so many different offensive sets, right? So during the game against Hawaii, spread was obviously their most dominant formation they would use, but then we saw some wing T, which is crazy. I mean, literally two wing players, a running back in the backfield, a quick little motion coming around. Daniels turned around, pitched it, and then he got involved in the passing game, or in the blocking game on a sweep play. So it's unbelievable. They ran a little bit of wing T, then they ran some really tight 3 tight end sets as well.
Yeah.
Then they condensed it to quarterback power runs to where it's multiple tight ends, a running back to the right, like I mentioned, quarterback power, quarterback sweep. So they use so many different looks on the offensive side of the ball. They love using shifts and motions as well. They had a play too where they ran a fake quarterback sweep, wide receiver reverse, double pullers coming across the opposite side. Like there's so many different things they do on offense. And that's why last year at Sacramento State, why Troy Taylor had one of the top offenses in the entire country because of how balanced they are, right? Over 240 yards on the ground a game, over 260 yards passing a game. So it's going to be a difficult challenge for this USC defense, but it'll be our first glimpse of the improved defensive side of the ball, how Alex Grinch can game plan. This is going to be the biggest game so far this year for game planning, making sure that these new faces, the transfers, the freshmen, understand what they're doing on every single play and knowing what to do on all these different looks that they're going to see on Saturday.
Now, I talked to Dion about this on Sunday's episode, but he said that he could tell from week 1 to week 2, Tackett, in the limited playing time that he did get on Saturday, hadn't really made the jump that he was hoping to see as far as play recognition or pre-snap read, post-snap read. Is this something where, with the Troy Taylor offense that you just described, are you in favor of playing maybe a Shane Lee over Tackett? Because Shane Lee has that IQ, that identification, skill that is more honed than maybe Tackett Curtis as a young freshman.
Yeah, I agree, and that's a great point by Dion. It's what we saw in the spring, right? It's what we saw a little bit Tackett Curtis in the spring game. Obviously, we didn't get to see a whole lot of fall camp, but that's expected, right? Tackett's going to be a great player. There's no question about that, and especially hearing how the coaching staff and his teammates talk about him, he's going to be a great player. But when you get to that college level, especially as a true freshman, and with how complex offenses are nowadays, and especially going against this Troy Taylor Stanford offense, it's tough if you're a half second late, right? Because there's so many athletes on that side of the ball. If you're late to your read, if you're not fully sure what you're doing every single play, now you can play 110%, fly around, hit people. There's no worry there for Tackett. But yes, being able to see, to adjust, to understand motion shift, pre-snap looks can force you to play a little bit slower. And if you're not on your P's and Q's that week and you don't watch a ton of film, or you're just not used to seeing it and have that experience, it can absolutely hurt you. So I wouldn't be surprised. And obviously Tackett has to sit out for the first half of this game, and just not trying to brush by that. I love seeing the effort that he has. Obviously got to be a little bit smarter there. And I understand college football, protecting the players, want to be smart there. His motor, his ferocity, the way he plays, how much he flies around the field and loves hitting people, that's check, right? All those parts are great, but you just got to be a little bit smarter and slow down a little bit and understand your reads. But, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch on the defensive side of the ball go with a little bit more experience this week, guys that are used to playing at that college level and can kind of read and react to these defenses a little bit better than a freshman can.
As you mentioned, you said that this is a huge week for Alex Grinch and his game plan. Why is that?
Just because when you play a team that has so many unique looks, you have to be able to you have to understand what you're doing on every single play, right? You get out and spread. Say we're going in spread, right? They're in spread offense. They're normal offense. Their MO. That's what they like to do. Okay, we can go nickel personnel. We can have our normal guys out there. We know let's go zone coverage, man coverage, whatever it may be. And guys are used to what they're doing in those situations, especially Nevada and San Jose State both ran those spread type of offenses. But now when they go into wing T, things that you're not used to seeing, when they go into these 3 tight end sets, now you're going to have to mismatch different personnel groupings. You're going to have to know when motions happen. Do we switch that off in man? Do we shift the front on the defensive line? When they get in these reverse plays, end around plays, you have to be so what's the word I'm looking for here?
Cohesive?
Not cohesive, but disciplined. You have to be so disciplined on the backside, especially, and that's with scheme, knowing, hey, you may see quarterback, running back, motion wide receiver go away, but then Stanford will run these unique gadget trick type plays where they'll bring a wide receiver reverse, an end around, a pitch where everything's going left and someone's coming back around right. You have to be so disciplined both in game plan and as a player to know as a backside defensive end or a backside linebacker, backside safety, that I can't just chase the play. I have to know that I have to stick to my to what the scheme is and understand someone's coming back around. I got to be there to make the play, because if one guy's off, when you go against an offense like that, you're going to see explosive play after explosive play.
So in some ways, this game is kind of a litmus test or check-in to see where this defense is, where the defenders are in their understanding of this defense and their ability to read and react.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I mentioned, it can't just be, all right, we're playing a spread offense, here we go. Check. We know how we run against this. This is what we played against Coach Riley's offense, this air raid. They do so many different things on the offensive side of the ball that you're almost game planning for 3 teams this week, right?
Wow.
Because of and go back and watch the Hawaii film. If you like watching film, go look and write down all the different formations, all the different personnel groupings, all the different looks that Stanford uses on the offensive side of the ball, and you'll be amazed. It's not, and I say air raid spread is their MO, which it is. That's their base down and their base downs, first and second down, even third and long, stuff like that. But when they get in these short yardages, even sometimes on early down and distances, they will get into these unique, funky looks, bring in multiple tight ends, bring in these different personnel groupings to where if you're not locked in defensively and you don't have a scheme and a plan for every look that you're going to get, you're going to be in trouble.
And this is Troy Taylor's MO, right? This is not just something he put on tape against Hawaii so that everyone has to prepare for 3 different opponents.
Yeah, this is what he does. And this is, in my opinion, obviously I have no control or no part of the hiring process at Stanford, but I think that's a huge reason of why he was hired, is that this Stanford team, this Stanford program wanted a new look, right? They wanted a new look on offense. They didn't want to be the same thing. And although there was a lot of success with what David Shaw did, with what Harbaugh did in years past, they wanted to go a different direction. And the landscape of college football is changing, right? You have to have, like you said, a little bit more of a running quarterback. You have to have an explosive offense that can keep up with the USCs, that can keep up with the Oregons, the Washingtons of the world. And that's the direction Stanford's going. And that's why they brought in a guy like Troy Taylor, who had the number 4 overall offense in all of college football last year at Sac State. in the FCS level.
I will say, though, could you imagine the Stanford offense of old with these new clock rules?
Yeah.
You'd get like 2 possessions a half.
Yeah, and you know what? I know there are little brothers. We don't like talking about them and all that, but Chip Kelly made a great point about that.
Great quote.
It was. What he said was, it was something along the lines of, we had 4 possessions in the first half alone. Hopefully you're selling a lot of commercials.
Yeah.
And it's true. It is. It's frustrating. It's frustrating because you're so used to how college football works. Whenever they change something, no matter how big, how little it is, either on the field, off the field, we've seen transfer portal, NIL, there's always an adjustment period. But now when you're changing the pace of play in the actual game, it can get a little frustrating, especially for these offenses who thrive off of having multiple possessions and being explosive and putting up a lot of points.
Of course. It's something where I'm not a fan. I'm hoping that I've seen a lot of backlash on social media. I'm hoping that maybe this is something that they can fix going forward.
And that's what I was thinking about when I saw that quote from Chip Kelly is they can't change rules obviously mid-season, right? This would have to be at the end of the year adjust. So yeah, I mean, love it or hate it, you're going to have to deal with it this year, and hopefully it goes back to how it was next season, or maybe they keep it. I don't know, but you have to be able to adjust. You have to be able to stay ahead of the curve as a play caller, as a defender, whatever it may be. But it's going to be interesting to see how Stanford may use that to their advantage as well. Let's try to keep Caleb Williams in this offense off of the field. We may not see as much spread offense as we saw against Hawaii. They may go more to this 2 or 3 tight end set, this wing T. It's so weird to me in 2023 saying wing T.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe me, go watch. There's a 4th down play. It's a 3rd or 4th down play on the goal line. They absolutely get into a wing T type look, do a little quick shuffle motion, a quick pitch, and then Daniels turns around and is a lead blocker in the run game. So it's unbelievable all the different things they do, but it'll be interesting to see how Troy Taylor and this offense uses that to their advantage to try to keep Lincoln Riley's offense off the field.
Already on defense, granted, again, against Hawaii, but what did you see from game 1?
Yeah, so stats, first of all, listen to these stats, and I'll explain why, but this is a crazy stat. So total points allowed, Hawaii had 24, which puts Stanford defense at 76 in the country. Now, total yards allowed last week, Hawaii had 350 yards, total yards, right? 72nd in the country for Stanford's defense. Total passing yards allowed was 355. So they had 5 more passing yards than they had total yards, right? So that puts Stanford's defense and their secondary, and we'll get into that a little bit, at 121st in the country, giving up 355 passing yards to Hawaii. But in the run game, total rushing yards allowed last week was -5 yards, which is ranked 1st in the entire country for Stanford's defense. Now, yes, a huge part of that was Hawaii is a pass-heavy offense. They threw the ball 50 times, but when they did try to run it, nothing. I mean, they shut down everything. Their front 4, their front 7 is so good, and I'll explain that a little bit as we get into their breakdown, but they're so good up front, and they're so physical. This is a little bit more of Stanford from the past, used to seeing these big physical bodies up front and creating havoc in the backfield. And then on 3rd down, they allowed 50% from Hawaii last week, and then 4th down, they allowed Hawaii at 33%.
Alrighty, so then key players, did anyone stand out to you there?
Yeah, I think the leader of their team, their safety, Alakai Gilman, 5'9", 195 pounds. He's a senior, led the team in tackles with 7. He's kind of their do-it-all guy on the back end. You see him all over the field. They'll absolutely bring him 3 or 4 times in the Hawaii game. They'll bring him on pressures. They'll blitz him off the edge. Reminds me a little bit of Max Williams from last year, kind of that role as a safety. Not the biggest guy in the world, but not afraid to come up and tackle, can cover well, does a good job of really being a leader on this defense. And then their big-time playmaker on defense, they have him as a linebacker, but he's more of a rush-in type.
Okay.
Stanford will mix up 4-down and 3-down looks, so they call their defensive end linebackers on their stat sheet or on their roster. But David Bailey, 6'3", 240 pounds, a sophomore, had 6 tackles last week and had 3 sacks as well against Hawaii. So he was all over the field. And then their other 2 players that stood out to me was safety Scotty Edwards, 6 foot, 205 pounds. He's a sophomore, 6 tackles, 1 sack, another guy that they like to bring in safety pressure. And then their linebacker, Tristan Sinclair, 6'1", 221 pounds. He's a senior. He had 5 tackles, 1 pass breakup. But he is a player that has a high motor. Similar a little bit to Tackett Curtis. He's all over the field. He'll come up and hit you, and he's a very physical linebacker.
Now, in my opinion, David Bailey looked like a dude against Hawaii.
He is a dude.
So I would assume that's the red dot guy for this week?
Absolutely. I have one red dot guy this week, and that is David Bailey, and that is going to be huge for both Michael Tarquin and Jonah Monheim. They put him on the edge. Now, they will do a lot of stunning up front. They only like to bring 4. And even when they bring blitzes and pressure, they like to only bring 4. Very few times did they bring more than 4. Even when they bring double linebackers, they'll drop both defensive ends out. So it'll be 2 interior tackles, cross-dog pressure, right? So they like to bring four. That is their MO on defense, is to bring pressure. But when they do, David Bailey is the guy to key on. He loves to get after the quarterback. He loves to pin his ears back, very physical, very aggressive. He's got great athleticism, only a sophomore too. So his get off on the football too is unbelievable. So that's someone that this offensive line absolutely has to key on this week.
Now, overall, you mentioned their defense. When a defense that USC is playing is number one in the nation in a category, I feel like that's notable. Granted, it's after week one, but what do you see from this defense?
Yeah, so first and foremost, their front four. They do a great job up front of changing up their looks. And what I mean by that is they try to confuse you with either a 3-down or a 4-down look, and they make it confusing of who's a defensive lineman, who's a linebacker. And what I mean by that is you won't just see a defensive end stood up, and then two interior defensive linemen with their hand on the ground. They'll go defensive end stood up, defensive lineman hand on the ground, interior defensive lineman stood up, and then defensive end with his hand on the ground. So they mix up these very funky looks. They do a lot of things differently on the defensive side of the ball with their front four that tries to confuse you. And then when they bring pressure, like I mentioned, they only like to bring four, but you never really know where that's coming from. So this will be a huge week for this offense. Not only our front five, our offensive line, but for Caleb and the running backs to also be in tune with, okay, I've seen this look before. I know where the pressure is coming from, because where this Stanford defense excels is with their front four and their front seven, getting after the quarterback, creating havoc in the backfield, because they do struggle in the back end. Again, they gave up 355 passing yards to Hawaii last week, and I think their secondary is where they need to get a little bit better, but their front four and front seven absolutely makes up for that.
So if you're USC, you definitely want to get the ball out early.
Yeah, I would like to see a little bit of quick game this week. You know, let's put them on their heels. Let's frustrate a defensive line. It's so frustrating for a defensive lineman to have these twists, these stunts, these different looks up front. They use them, but by the time they even get a chance to engage with the O-lineman, the ball's out, and we've got Zachariah Branch on a quick slant. We've got Dorian Singer on a hitch route, letting him get the ball in his hands and make a guy miss, or we have guys over the middle like Mario Williams and Taz Washington, then run them down a little bit, and then let's go a little bit more longer pass pro, and then take a shot down the field. But yeah, absolutely starting off, I'd like to see Caleb getting the ball at his hands, frustrating this front four for Stanford and not allowing them to get home.
Now, as far as the run defense, how do you expect USC to approach this one, given what you just talked about?
Yeah, that's the biggest question for me, because I'm torn, and we'll get to that, to our keys in the game in a minute, or keys of the game. But that's where I'm torn is do we say, okay, they've got a great run defense, and we've got the best quarterback in the entire country, let's just throw the ball over the field, right? Let's just force their hand. What they struggle at is coverage down the field, right? They like to play zone coverage. I didn't see a whole lot of man against Hawaii. When they did play man, they struggled heavily. They had balls thrown over their head. They had crosser routes that they struggled to pick up. They like to play zone, but when they played zone, and there were a couple times they dropped 8 in coverage, only bring 3, and there were holes all over the field. There were windows to throw in. The quarterback from Hawaii was just kind of sitting back there and picking them apart a little bit. But then where they struggled when they started bringing pressure on the defensive side of the ball, forced a Hawaii quarterback try to get it out a little bit quicker. But again, they struggled in coverage. So they were exposing them in the secondary when they played Hawaii going against Stanford. But yeah, I mean, that's where I'm torn is, do we establish a run game, even though they only gave up, or I don't even know how you say that, -5 rushing yards.
Net.
They didn't give up -5. Allowed -5 rushing yards from Wego. Do we try to stick to our balanced type of offense and say, okay, I don't care who we're playing. You could be the number one run defense in the entire country. We're still going to run our offense and run the football. Or do we rely on Caleb Williams and know, hey, they struggle in the secondary. This is still a different look Stanford team, but they're not a team, in my opinion, that's going to come up and have a shootout with us, right? They're not that explosive. Now, they do run the spread. They do little things differently, but they're not going to come out there and put up 50, 60 points against us. So do we try to do that early, allow Caleb to just get loose and go crazy and throw the ball over the field and trust our front five to protect and our running backs to protect and pass protection, or do we try to establish a run game a little bit and go against something that they excel at?
If you're head coach Lincoln Riley, what are you doing, Cody?
Caleb Williams. It's the Caleb Williams show. Let's trust our front five. Let's trust our offensive line to protect, and let's let Caleb throw the ball as many times as he wants and expose this secondary and get after them in the pass game. And then from there, maybe we can get a little bit of runs, get them to play. And they do play zone coverage. It's not like they're loading the box and they're struggling in the back end. They'll play too high and force you to throw, and they still gave up some big plays. But if I'm Lincoln Riley, and again, I don't get paid to do his job, just disclaimer here. But if I'm that, I have the best quarterback in the entire country, the returning Heisman Trophy winner. He's been on fire the last 2 games. I'm letting him come out there and trusting our pass protection and letting him rip them apart.
How would you compare this defense to the last 2 that USC just faced, maybe talent-wise or just what they'll see?
This will absolutely be the best defensive line that we've seen up to this point. Front four, front seven, by far. Now, again, we played San Jose State and Nevada, so I'm not trying to knock on them, but obviously this is a Pac-12 opponent. You expect the competition level to be a little bit better, but this will be the toughest challenge that our front seven or that our front five will face going against this Stanford defense. But secondary-wise, not a whole lot of difference from Nevada a week ago. I feel like they struggle in coverage. I feel like Nevada last week was like, hey, this is what we talked about on the preview was this is what we do. I don't care who we're playing. We're going to stick to it. And they did. And they played a ton of man-to-man against us. They brought a ton of pressure. They played very aggressive, and we exposed them for it. And Caleb Williams had a field day through the air. And like we said, 14 different guys caught a pass. Miller Moss came in and played well. So it'll be interesting to see if Stanford sticks to what they did last week against Hawaii, or if they're going to change up their scheme a little bit. I would expect them to change up a little bit, especially now that we have film from 2023 to seeing what Hawaii did well against them. But overall, I don't know. I think the biggest issue for us is going to be stopping that defensive line, and it's going to be a huge challenge for our offensive line of getting after them and our running backs to be able to find a hole and pick up some yardage in the run game.
Any other thoughts on the defensive front that USC will face?
I'm hyped. I'm excited. It's going to be so much fun. This is a huge challenge for USC. I know apparently we're a 30-point favorite in this game. I mean, I would like to say that. Obviously, I'm insanely biased for USC, so
insanely biased.
I'm all for the 30-point favorite, but I don't want that. And I know it won't be for the coaching staff, but that can't be the mindset going into this week, because this is a good football team. This isn't the same Stanford team that we've seen the last couple years that struggled to win 3 or 4 games. This is a team with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, a new coaching staff that can come out and kind of punch you in the face early, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and get after you. And if you're not ready for it, it could be a wake-up call early on.
Well, in that sense, Cody, let's just get into the USC Pharmacy prescription to win. We got to talk about USC's keys to the game to secure victory on Saturday. First up, be great in pass protection this week and communicate against an elite front four.
Yeah, Stanford, their best part of their defense is their front four, and they do a great job of showing you a 3-down look, of showing you a 4-down look. They'll stand up a defensive end. They'll stand up an interior nose tackle, which is not very common. So we've always got to be communicating this Saturday throughout the entire game. Pass protection is going to be a huge part of this football game. Like I mentioned, they struggle a little bit in coverage on the back end, but how we can take advantage of that is being great in pass protection up front and allow Caleb Williams to use his feet to move around a little bit, to be comfortable in the pocket and pick apart this secondary. And it's going to be a huge challenge, and in my opinion, the biggest challenge of the year so far for this offensive line. Now,
the second key to the game is for USC's offense. Be explosive in the pass game and force Stanford to keep up.
Yeah, Stanford last week going against Hawaii only allowed -5 rush yards in the game, but they ended up giving up 355 yards through the air. So that's where the question comes in. Do we want to attack their run game, or do we want to take advantage of their secondary that struggles a little bit in the back end? And the answer for me is, let's let Caleb Williams, returning Heisman Trophy winner, the best quarterback in all of college football, let's let him go out there and pick them apart and be explosive in the pass game. And although this Stanford offense is different than what we're used to seeing from years past, yes, they run a little bit of the spread. Yes, they like to throw the ball around a little bit more than we're used to seeing. I don't know if they can keep up if we put up a lot of points on the offensive side of the ball. So let's score early and often and allow Caleb Williams to do what he does best.
The third and final key to the game is to contain quarterback Ashton Daniels and tight end Benjamin Eurosek on defense.
Yeah, those are the two guys on Stanford's offense that we have to be ready for on Saturday. Quarterback Ashton Daniels isn't going to wow you with his arm talent, but he does such a great job of playing within the scheme and playing within the system and being effective both in the pass game and the run game. And they will absolutely use quarterback design runs and allow him to turn into kind of like a running back and try to hurt you on the ground. But when he does throw the football, the main target that he looks for is tight end Benjamin Eurosek. He does a great job of creating separation in man-to-man coverage, and he does a great job of going up and high-pointing the football in those 50-50 throws. And last year, USC struggled a little bit with some of these bigger pass-catching tight ends, so we absolutely have to key on him on Saturday. But if we can contain both of those guys, then I think USC's defense will have a great game.
Alrighty, Cody, we need to get into questions, but before we do, just want to thank Audi. Performance is more exhilarating on a real road. Introducing the Audi Q5. Visit your SoCal Audi dealers, proud sponsors of the USC Trojans. Also, thanks to Symbiotica. Take your health to the next level with Symbiotica. Their premium, easy-to-take supplements fuel your body with key vitamins and minerals to help you reach peak performance on and off the field. Elevate your health today by going to Symbiotica.com and use code FIGHTON for 15% off site-wide. Alrighty.
That was one take. You're getting good at these.
Practice makes perfect.
There we go. Okay. All right, I'm ready for some questions.
I'm going to jump us into defensive questions first. Usually I go offense first, but let's start with Eddie, who said Stanford runs a ton of QB power, sweeps, counter. How does the defense deal with those numbers?
Great job, Eddie, by the way, watching your film. Love that.
We love film watchers.
Yeah, I mean, that's just game plan. That's scheme. That's why I mentioned earlier on this episode, it's so big for Coach Grinch to scheme against the different looks that Stanford's going to show you, and that's absolutely one. It's tough when you're not used to seeing something like that. So I guess TBD to answer that, but in my opinion, you get more of a base type of defense. Take the nickel defender out, bring in another linebacker, bring in an extra rush edge or defensive end, whatever you want to do, and go power against power.
Osorio said, would you put Rajon Davis 1-versus-1 against tight ends, or would you rather him continue to be a rush?
I would probably keep Davis as a rush. I don't know, though. I have no idea who's going to cover Urasek this week. It'll be interesting to watch, but I think Davis does such a great job getting after the quarterback. He saw some flashes on Saturday of him being disruptive in the pass game, doing a great job of spying Nevada's quarterback, Brendan Lewis, and keeping him from getting outside of the pocket. But, yeah, I'd like to keep him a little bit more in the box and maybe allow a safety body to come down and cover Urasek this week, or maybe even Jalen Smith, try him out there. I know there's a little bit of a height advantage, but let's see if he can be disruptive and be physical.
As a defensive coordinator, how do you weigh the installing something new rather than staying with what you're good at, even if it might not match exactly the opponent?
Yeah, I mean, that's why you've got to be flexible, especially in today's era of college football.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see a lot of the offenses are spread offenses, so you can stick to a nickel game plan and stick to what you do week in and week out for the most part. But when you play some of these unique different type of offenses, you have to lock in and know that, hey, I'm as a nickel defender, I may not play a whole lot this week. Or as, when we go dime package, bring in 5 DBs or do different things like that, I may not play a whole lot this week, and I've got to be a team first guy that knows we may need more base package this week. We may need a different look than what we're used to giving, and some other guys that aren't used to playing a whole lot might have to play a lot more.
Almost said, do you think Damani Jackson will be solidified as one of the starting quarterbacks, or do you think it will continue to rotate?
Yeah, Damani overall for me has been a little bit of up and down this year. He's had some flashes of seeing how good he can be. He's also given up some big plays in the pass game, but I love how aggressive and how physical he plays, but sometimes that can hurt you, and we saw that against Nevada. Being a little physical at the point of attack allowed the receiver to get over the top of him and catch a deep ball behind him, and then he had a couple PI penalties in the first game, just being so aggressive. But I don't know. I'd love to see him kind of solidify that role as a starting cornerback on this team and not have a lot of rotation issues. But I think only time will tell, and I think as the opponent gets better, especially this week against Stanford, we can really see how he's going to compare against these better wide receivers.
Do you think from a public's perspective, the fact that Damani was injured for his first freshman season, does that weigh how he's judged by fans? Just because I feel like if he was a true freshman out there playing how he is right now, which is technically what he is, but
he really
do you think he would be judged more fairly, I guess, quote unquote?
No, that's a great point. And he kind of is a true freshman at this point in playing terms and off-season terms. And Lincoln Riley said he hasn't really been healthy since his junior year of high school, with a full off-season, full spring ball, fall camp going into the summer, going summer, fall camp, and then into the season. Yeah, I do. I mean, and I think the reason that there is such an emphasis on Damani Jackson, it's not really him specifically, but last year as a unit outside of Mekhi Blackman, we struggled a little bit in coverage. And then last week against Nevada, some of the big-time plays, and we didn't give up a whole lot of them, but some of them were in those man-to-man secondary looks that we showed. Those were the big-time plays that Nevada had. So, yeah, I think it's a little bit more, I guess, shining a bright light on it, if you will, or a little more focus or emphasis on the DB play, on the cornerback play this year. But overall, that's why I said he's up and down. I think he is doing some things really well, and I think as the season continues to go, we're going to see a lot of improvement.
SG Carlos said, are Mason Cobb and Eric Gentry back in the lineup? We don't know.
Yeah.
I think the most we will get is out of Lincoln Riley during his Thursday press conference, but even then, I doubt that he will let that be publicly known for the opponent to scout. So TBD for Saturday.
Yeah, and we didn't even know, I don't think, that they weren't playing until the Trojan tailgate show.
No, I mean
the injury report you did.
Yeah, part of the reason they put an injury report into the show this season was because textbook examples of Mason Cobb and Eric Gentry showing up not dressed. So if you want the latest updates prior to the game, watch the tailgate show.
Yeah, watch the tailgate show.
Bada bing, bada boom,
Keely
look at
segment.
that.
She'll give you a full update on the injury report, so you'll know everything you need to know.
Well, thank you, Cody.
Yep.
We had a question from Zach with a K who said, USC's defense, how do they stop a big tight end?
Yeah, that's kind of the question or the topic that we've talked about a lot this show, and I honestly don't know. In my opinion, and I didn't mention this a couple questions ago, but I would like to see probably more of a safety body there. Like, I would be interested to see Bryson Shaw come down and be physical and play when we get in those man-to-man looks. See him play a little bit more on Urasek opposed to Jalen Smith. Let's keep Jalen Smith in the slot and allow him to cover those quick, speedy receivers. And I'd like to see a Bryson Shaw. I mean, Kalen Bullock even comes to mind, but he's so good at that center field position, playing sideline to sideline, covering the entire field, helping guys when they do get beaten man to play over the top and make a play on the football. But, yeah, overall it'll be interesting to see. And I don't even know how much man we're going to play. Maybe we double him. Maybe we go a lot more zone and try to have an in-and-out look with a linebacker and the nickel defender as well playing him. So it'll be interesting to see.
Trojan Sam, who's the Sam, the OG Sam, who's always commented, he said, I counted 4 defensive line stunts all games versus Nevada, 2 of those in garbage time. Do you think Alex Grinch will stick with this approach going forward, or was it a one-off because he believed Nevada's offensive line was just not good enough and stunting wasn't needed? And he said, praying for the former. Yeah,
no, I agree. And again, I didn't see how many they had, but if they only had 4 the entire game, I think that speaks volumes to the trust that Coach Grinch has in his front 4 and his defensive line of allowing them to have the MO that he wants, right? Let's play man-to-man. Got to be a little bit better there, but let's pin our ears back up front, not do a whole lot of twists and stunts and movements, and let's let our front 4 guys be aggressive. The guys that we recruited, the transfer portal, both incoming freshmen as well, to come in here and be aggressive and create havoc in the backfield. So I would like for it to be a lot more of, hey, win your one-on-ones, get after the quarterback, and let's keep those quarterbacks moving out of the pocket and collapsing it and creating havoc in the backfield.
Moving over to offense, Steve said, do you think the tight ends will start being utilized more this season? What's crazy is, like, even the wide receivers are vying for receptions, let alone, the tight ends.
Yeah, no, it is a loaded, I guess tight ends will throw in there with it, but a skill position room. It's so tough. And that was a question we had coming into the season is, how does everybody eat, right? How does everybody get their share of touches? And obviously 14 guys catching a pass. Everybody's getting some love here and there, whether it's early on in the game or later on in the third and fourth quarter. But I think as the season goes on, that obviously is going to condense. We're not going to see as many games of 14 different players with a catch. But I would absolutely love for the tight ends to be more involved. And I've been a big fan of the tight ends. Lake McCree, in my opinion, has taken a huge stride. And we saw him against San Jose State. He caught a seam pass down the hash, had a great play there. But I'd like to see the tight ends used more in the red zone, in my opinion. But as I say that, in my mind, it kind of bounces back and forth because we have such great athletes on the outside, too. Yeah. Let's keep taking advantage of that. So we'll see. But I'm a big fan of tight ends down in the red zone. Use those bigger bodies and allow them to go up against some one-on-one matchups and create some mismatches.
Corey says, which moment last week was Marshawn Lloyd most excited about? The touchdown run, the catch, or the block for Taj Washington?
That block was sweet, and I didn't see that until you posted it on Twitter.
Oh, really?
So when Taj caught the ball over the middle, the little slant route or the jerk route, as we like to call it, he ran a little jerk route. Marshawn Lloyd was about 5 or 8 yards behind him, ran all the way downfield and got in front and actually had the touchdown-breaking block there for Taj Washington. Now, Taj might have broke that tackle on his own because he's a good player, but
sure.
Nonetheless, I'm going with that one. I think Marshawn Lloyd's confidence overall is going up. I think he's getting more comfortable in this scheme, but a guy can be great as a running back doing what he does best, right? Running the football, reading the blocking scheme, picking up big yards on the ground, being involved in the pass game. We saw with that ball over the middle to him. But when you start seeing a guy like that, especially a newcomer, putting his body on the line, selling out for his teammates, because he easily could have done put his hands up, touchdown, go get him Taj, but he ran all the way down, outran everybody, outran Taj, and threw the touchdown-breaking block. So I think looking back on film, he'll get the most praise for that play as opposed for his performance on the ground and through the air.
Instaphoto CWD said, do you think Lake McCree will catch a touchdown this game?
Yes. I'm going short answer. Yes.
Okay.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for either Lake McCree, Jude Wolf is a 1B, but I'd love to see some touchdown love this week. And obviously our questions are there too. But yeah, I'd love to see Lake McCree catch a touchdown this week and get in the end zone.
PLH55 said, how does the Quinones injury alter the offensive line depth chart, particularly at backup center? Who do you expect to play center if Didic had to come out for any reason? Now, we talked about this at the top. Now, if you look at the depth chart, it technically says Killian O'Connor would come in next. Part of me also thinks that Andrew Millick might get a shot. He's a guy who also received backup snaps through the last couple of years that he's been a Trojan. So it's one of those things where the depth chart might say something, but in the moment, the coaches might actually go a different way. So TBD, but hopefully that never has to come up.
Yeah.
But if there's another garbage time, that's definitely something that you look for, who's going to come in there for 57.
Yeah.
We got a question from Timpson Cameron who said, what is your favorite tradition against Stanford?
It's got to be the Weekender, right?
There's also the counter march. The USC band does a counter march.
Yeah, I have no idea what that is.
If you're gonna be at the game this Saturday, right?
Yeah,
you should watch it, because basically what they do is like they march in like a very like traditional together way, but half like a part of the band goes crazy, kind of making fun of the Stanford band. And
Wait,
then
so both bands like perform
no,
together?
no, it's just
okay,
USC's band. I'm sure the band alumni are listening to this and cringing really hard. I'm so sorry, but it's a fun USC tradition.
Okay, but
what I'll say.
Is this like pregame or
Halftime?
Oh yeah, see, I would have been in the locker room.
Yeah,
during halftime.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, no, the Weekender also is awesome.
Very fun,
also,
yes.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, the Weekender is if we're playing at SC, all the Stanford fans come down, I think starting Thursday or whatever it may be. And then vice versa. If we're playing at Stanford, all the USC fans go down. But that was the coolest part as a player, playing at Stanford and seeing how many Trojan fans showed up. So that was really fun.
The thing, like, we talked about this on Trojans Live on Monday, and Jordan mentioned it specifically talking to me and Max Brown. Like, for the last decade for us, like, I'm lumping you into this, Cody, like the Stanford USC matchup has just been so
crazy.
I don't want to say iconic, but it's been in that realm where it's just like, it's always an interesting game no matter what.
Yeah, no, it's been some huge moments, but both teams seem to play their best when they play against each other. And I don't know what that reason is, but it seems like it just means a little bit more. And especially all 3 games that I played, well, 4 actually, we played in the Pac-12 championship against them my senior year. But all the games I played against Stanford were definitely some memorable ones.
Yeah. Alex had a question for you about the lineup on Saturday. He said, based on last week's game, do you think Rajon Davis and Shane Lee will start against Stanford?
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is a quote that Lincoln Riley said, and that was a huge quote. And we kind of brushed by it earlier, but from a player standpoint, to have your head coach talk about that, and he said something along the lines of,
it was the cleanest game.
The cleanest game they've had. I absolutely would expect to see Davis and Lee out there starting, and they've absolutely earned that right. They both played well. They both had a very good game. Lee led the team in tackles with 10, and then Rajon Davis kind of showed what he can do and all the hype we've heard about him this offseason. So I would expect to see both of them out there starting out on Saturday.
Okay, the final question from me is a fun one. It's from Steve. He says, for each of you, how would you each describe your own driving style, and how would someone else, like friends or family, describe your driving style? Now, I actually have a direct answer for this because, okay, last year on TikTok, have you heard like the presentation parties? Like that was a big thing, like a PowerPoint presentation party.
Oh yeah, about vacation stuff.
No, you could do it about vacation. So basically, like
I've seen one about like where our family should go on vacation.
So
I'm not big on TikTok though. So
you're fine. It was like a trend with like Gen Z, where what you would do is like have a party where everyone in attendance has to make a PowerPoint.
Okay.
And so my best friend since 5th grade, Josh, it was his birthday. Everyone had to make a PowerPoint. And so his PowerPoint subject was rating every one of his friends' driving skills.
Oh. Okay.
And so I actually texted him. I saw this tweet last night. I got the PowerPoint in my slide. And so for all the video watchers, you can see my slide.
Oh, boy.
The pro for me is that I have aggressive driving habits, particularly in dense urban areas, which generally leads to a reduction in overall travel time. Okay. But the con of my driving is that I'm flabbergasted and afraid when she's a passenger in a car being driven by someone with the same exact driving habits as her.
Yeah.
So in my defense, that's specifically Josh picking a bone with me because he drives like a crazy person, but apparently I do too. So.
Yeah, so my answer to that would be that I would like to think I'm a great driver, and I drive a big old truck, so it's you have to kind of be a good driver.
Everyone wants to think that they're a good driver.
But the only person that would disagree with you, I've never had anybody question about my driving except for my wife. My wife, Paige, and it's the we'll be coming up to a red light 200 yards away from a car stopping, and she'll reach over and, hey, babe, stop. And I'm like, we've got 200 yards. But to her defense, I do drive a little quick sometimes, but
I'm always Team Paige whenever it comes between a matter between you.
Yes, so no, I would agree with that. She's always right. I'm always wrong. I'll go with that one.
Well done.
But I would like to think I'm a great driver, and I think a lot of people would agree with that, unless you ask my wife, Paige.
Interesting. I would like to, for the record, say that I think I'm a good driver. Like, I'm defensive.
But we're all.
But I anticipate other people's moves. Like, I'm like, yep, I knew you were going to cut me off. Like, I'm like a safety back there.
Yeah.
I know what's coming.
You got good instincts?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
Exactly. But, ask any one of my friends, they'll probably be like, she's.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Cody, I have random.org pulled up, which means it's time to announce who won this week's giveaway. 2 tickets each to the Stanford game. I hope it's packed, Cody. I do too. A good Coliseum atmosphere, and I feel like the Stanford game has always had a good atmosphere. So we're doing our part. we're putting 4 people in the seats with this giveaway.
We got four that are going to be there. But we got 1 through 68 this week.
Ooh.
So a lot of people want to go to this Stanford game.
Okay.
Rightfully so, though. It's the last ever opener for the Pac-12. So it should be fun.
Last matchup for the foreseeable future. We don't know.
Yeah, we have no idea.
Yeah.
But okay, I'm ready. I got 1 through 68. Whenever you want to hit the button, go ahead.
12.
12.
My favorite number.
12 is Why Do Bill Chin. Why Do Bill Chin? I'll double check.
On what app?
That is on Instagram.
Ooh.
Let me make sure.
Congrats to the Instagram winners.
Why Do Bill Chin? The actual handle is insta.photo.cwd. So why do Bill Chin?
Who asked the question?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. So congratulations. You are the first winner and now the second one. I'm ready.
Okay. Sorry. I was looking at the questions. Ready? 47.
47 is Terrence House.
A familiar name.
Terrence House. Yeah, this is actually Terrence House was on before. This is the first reset winner from apparel. Now to getting tickets, let me double check that I'm saying the handle right. Terrence House. Yep, it's at TDH_77. And they follow all of us. We always check before we put the list together. So this week, Why Do Bill Chin and Terrence House, you guys are the winners. You both have won 2 tickets each to the Stanford game.
And Cody will reach out to you.
Yeah, I'll send it. So normally we wait. When we did apparel, we waited until the episode came out. So I didn't ruin the surprise. But now with planning, scheduling, all that, I let you know right away. But going on, so congratulations to them. But going on to this week.
Yes, good point.
We have a bye.
It's weird. So the schedule is a bye and then 2 away games.
Yeah.
So we don't have tickets to give away for a while. So we figured we'll just go back to giving out merch each giveaway.
Yeah, and then to be clear, these next 3 weeks will be like just apparel, but they're scratch weeks, right? So if you do win in these next 3 weeks, it's not going to discount you from being entered to winning tickets when we get back to the home game. So you can still enter this week. It'll go back to apparel, and again, the apparel is a hat, a sweatshirt, long sleeve shirt, or a T-shirt, and then we can sign or unsign or whatever you want. So we'll do apparel for the next 3 giveaways, and then we'll go back to the home games. But if you do win these next 3 weeks, it's not going to. You'll still be able to enter for tickets as well.
And 1 winner or 2 for the merch?
Ooh, we can keep up with 2 if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do 2.
Two
Let's do 2.
winners.
Let's keep it consistent for this
Well,
season.
they need an emoji, Cody,
I know,
in order to win.
And I do it every week, and I never prepare right.
Yep.
And now I've got to go look for an emoji.
Exactly.
I feel
My
like you already got
emoji is
it.
going to be a tree.
Ooh, I like it. Okay.
Boom, boom. Get it?
Tree.
Because of the opponent.
Yeah, no, I like it. Which will completely get off topic, but I never understood why they're the tree when they're called the Stanford Cardinal. I'm sure someone does.
There's probably some historical
Okay.
thing that we're missing, and everyone's like, duh. But sure.
So we'll go tree. I've been doing sport theme. I think I'm going to stick with that. We'll go tree, and it's in the sport theme, but I don't know if it's really sport. We're going to go with a boomerang. I'm going to go boomerang.
Okay.
Tree.
I feel like this is going to confuse people, but sure.
No, you type in boomerang on your emoji list. It'll pop up. There's only one on there.
Okay.
It is a brown boomerang, and there's tape on the boomerang, and it's cardinal and gold on there. So,
wow, look at you.
So we've got a tree and a boomerang for this week's giveaway.
Okay.
And again, to be entered in that, if you're a first-time listener, if you want to tweet the emoji to us at either myself, Keely, or the Victory Pod, you have to be following myself, Keely, or the Victory Pod on Twitter.
Accounts.
And then if you want to enter on Instagram, either by direct message or you can comment on the Instagram page as well. Anywhere you do it, we'll find it. But if you enter on Instagram, again, you have to be following myself, Keely, or the Victory Pod and the Victory Pod, all 3 of them. And then we pick our winners each week. And then again, this week will be apparel, just so we're clear. For the next 3 weeks will be apparel. And then we'll let you know when we get back to tickets. And you can win both apparel and tickets. So you can win twice. Who knows?
Alrighty, Cody, it's time for me to pass it over to you for the Cody question time. We're going to make sure it's efficient, Cody.
I'm going to be efficient. Be efficient. I did, and in my defense, we had a lot last week. It did go long.
I know. I just heard some complaints.
Well, you know what? I enjoy that. So if you're complaining, then you're the audience, so you're right. But I do enjoy that segment of the show. I like the rapid fire questions. I did get a lot again this week, but I will try to be quick through these. But I'm ready. I always do all the pre-talk for it. Okay.
So do it.
I'm ready. You got my timer?
Yes.
Okay, the first one is from Joe Osorio 23. Do you think Darwin Barlow will begin seeing more snaps? He always runs hard. I'm a big fan of Darwin Barlow. Obviously, Marshawn Lloyd, Austin Jones have been the lead back. Quentin Joyner has got some love as well. Darwin Barlow had a great run against Nevada, very powerful run. So I'm with you, Joe. I'd like to see more of him, but we'll just see how the game plan plays out this week. The next one is from Ray Cahuenga. If Caleb returns for another season next year, what's his potential NIL deal?
Goodness.
That's kind of a two-parter. I mean, it's tough though because everything in the world screams he's leaving, right? It says he's the number 1 overall pick. He should be. If he's not, then the team that's picking first doesn't need a quarterback, but he should be a top 5 pick at worst. Best quarterback in the draft, best player in the draft. But the NIL, it adds a little bit of a different factor to it because some guys that maybe not in Caleb's position, but first round potential, you could potentially make more. Now, this is excluding signing bonus. Obviously, the signing bonus for a first rounder is a big thing, but at a base salary, and I've seen some tweets about this, there's some NIL players in college that are making more than some of the top players in the NFL with their base salary for the year. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Now, for what he's going to get in the NIL, Ray, I have no idea. So sky's the limit, whatever he wants, pretty much.
Here's what's interesting, what came out today, because Caleb did an article, he did a feature in GQ.
Yeah.
And his dad said, the funky thing about the NFL draft process is he'd almost be better off not being drafted than being drafted first. And so he said, the way the system is constructed, you go to the worst possible situation. So he said it's a gift and a curse, and kind of alluded to the fact that
the NIL could play a factor.
Yeah, he could. Yeah,
and
but also just to avoid a team that he doesn't think is the right fit.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy about, and not just Caleb, but the entire college football world is if you are a potential high pick or guaranteed 1, 2, 3, however it may play out, if you don't want to go. Now, yes, you risk injury. Yes, you risk other factors that could affect your draft stock, but you can now make money through the NIL. So I think that'll play a little bit of a bigger role. But that's a great question, Ray. It got us talking, obviously. But that's going to be interesting to see in the future how some of these potential high draft picks go about it, whether they want to go to this team or whether they think it won't be a great scenario if they want to come back and take NIL money and then be smart about it that way or however it's going to play out. So that'll be interesting. The next one is from Trojan Mom 06. What are your thoughts on playing Stanford for the last time in the Coliseum? So bittersweet. Yeah, that's the best word to describe it. It's bittersweet. A lot of great memories there. A lot of great tradition between these two teams. Hopefully, there can be an out-of-conference game next year or for years in the future, but we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah.
The next one's from Trojan Dad 516. What was your favorite pregame meal? That's a tough one because I am not a big fan. Even now, doing broadcasting, whether it's this or a radio show or the Trojan Tailgate, I'm not a big fan of pregame or eating before I have to do something. I don't know if it's because I'm anxious or nervous or whatever it may be, but in high school, we'd eat pasta and probably too much of it, which wasn't the best idea. College was normally, on away games, you're at a hotel, so whatever your nutritionist would design for the hotel to have. But breakfast would normally be like 2 bites of eggs, 2 bites of a hash brown, and then a bite of a pancake, and then I'm done.
Wow.
And I would be just too nervous to eat, and then lunch, the same thing.
Makes sense.
I'd eat like a piece of steak or like a bite of a steak, bite of chicken, a little bit of rice and veggies, and then I was done. I just could not eat until after the game. And then the next question is from Josh Harden 1. Where do you want to see the most progress from the Trojans in their first conference game? I'm going secondary. I'd like to see our secondary. We've got a difficult tight end, a couple tall receivers that kind of potentially create a little bit of a mismatch for us on defense. I'd like to see the secondary, especially in man-to-man, play a little bit better this week. The next one is from Marker1001. Not a question, but thank you for one of the coolest moments I've had as a sports fan in general. The drive leading up to the Hadari field goal was epic. I was sitting in the Stanford section because me and my brother got last-minute tickets. The Stanford fans were really feeling themselves all game, and I had to keep my brother from talking trash. As a former player, I knew the situation. Just wait. All the offense had to do was get into field goal position, and right before the kick, I let my brother I let my brother off the leash. LOL, you could see the Stanford fans getting more nervous throughout the drive. The feeling of excitement throughout the collie while being in the middle of shocked, silent Stanford fans lives in my mind forever and on my phone. That was cool. That was one of those picture ones where you could write a little bit longer, but that took me down memory lane a little bit right there too, Marker, so I appreciate that.
Such a fun game, Cody, the one that you had against Stanford.
Yeah, any fans that were there to witness that was just one of the coolest moments for me in the Coliseum. The next one is from DJ Whitehead 7. House on a beach or cabin in the mountains? I'm going cabin in the mountains every single time.
What a Bakersfield boy you are.
Every single time. And it's funny, too, because
House on the beach.
I live in Orange County, and we're like 7 minutes from the beach, and we'll go walk we'll go walk my dog down there a couple times by the water, but I'm not a big beach guy. I'm not a fan of going down to the beach. So
weird.
I'm going cabin in the mountains. The next one from Brian Sommers. Stanford rushed for 221 yards against us last year. How do we shut them down? I think how we do that is obviously scheme, but also what we did this offseason, right? We went out in the transfer portal. We got some great freshmen. We've added depth to that front seven. Now it's time for them to showcase that this week against Stanford. and create havoc in the backfield. The next one is from Lido Laralde, 87. Can Curtis be the next linebacker to wear 55? Who makes that decision for jersey number? Again, we're not, and I've asked a little bit, we're not fully sure how that goes about, whether it is the coaching staff or equipment staff that come up with that, or if a player has to request it. But, Tack is a great candidate for that. Obviously, he's got a long way to go and continue to get better. He's off to a great start, but absolutely someone that I could see if that was something he wanted to do in the future, could be a great candidate to wear 55. The next one is from Ryan Guyvet. What are your thoughts on the Colorado program under Sanders?
Fascinating.
That's another podcast in itself. We could talk about that. But that was awesome. It was really cool to see. I mean, it just goes to show when you get, and obviously they had a lot of new, I think it was 80, 86 maybe new players on this team. Yes, that was a huge factor. But when you can get a team that was 1-11 from a year ago, even with some new faces, even with some new players, but you get them to believe in themselves, going up against TCU, who was, runner-up last year in the national championship, won the Big 12 conference, to go out there and beat them at TCU and their ranked opponent was awesome to see. And that game against Colorado this year, I wouldn't say it's circled just yet, but maybe a little highlight on it now.
There's some eyeball emojis.
Yeah, there's definitely some eyeballs on that one. The next one from Steve Chavez, 18. Do you think SC should run the ball more? I don't. I think we've done a great job of being balanced. The first game against San Jose State, that opening drive was 10 plays, 80 yards, and I think 8 of them were run plays. So we've done a great job of being balanced, but when you have the best quarterback in the entire country, you want to let him do what he does best, and that's throw it all over the field. So I think Lincoln Riley does a great job of being balanced. The next one is from Victory for Troy. How vanilla do you think offense was for the first 2 games? Guessing we hold back looks. Yeah, I think it was pretty simple. And again, a big part of that is game planning and scheming, going against what San Jose State does well and attacking that, or what they struggle with and attacking that. And then same thing for Nevada. But this week will just all depend on how Lincoln Riley wants to attack the Stanford defense. The next one is from Ireland DeVille. What were the defense weakness in week 2 that USC should fix for Pac-12 plus Notre Dame play later in the year? Again, I think overall it was a great defensive performance. Some highs, some lows, but I would like to see a little bit better coverage in the secondary. And that's just me being a little specific. And I'm not trying to be too harsh, but that's an area I think we can improve on. Alyssa Bubble said, I need to win sometime soon. We will see, Alyssa. That's random.org. That's not up to us. And then the next one's from Raul Sanchez, 323. Special teams needs a little more excitement. Will there be some this weekend? I mean, I guess. I mean, Zachariah Branch has brought some excitement in my opinion.
Yeah, I would pause on that.
Both in the kickoff return and punt return. So it's been a lot of fun to watch, but hopefully he'll take another one to the house this weekend. And then the last one is from Brian's Garden Therapy. If Trojans don't watch out for blank, they could be in trouble. I'm going to go back. I'm going to say Colorado. I think Colorado's a team. I mean, it's easy to say Stanford being a 30-point favorite this week and a team that I think is better than a 30-point underdog in Stanford. But I think Colorado's a team that's going to surprise some people this year. I think that's a game on the schedule in recent years that has been, I don't want to say guaranteed win, but a game you should win. I think Colorado's going to be surprising this year.
Yeah, I feel like Colorado got put on the map. So I would say Stanford just because Colorado got bumped with their performance.
Absolutely.
But that leads us into our score predictions for the Stanford game, Cody. What do you got? I already have mine. I'm ready.
Okay, I'm going to go this week. I'm going to go with, I think Stanford's a little bit better than some of the opponents we've played. So I'm going to go 49-24 is my prediction.
Interesting.
49-24.
My prediction was 45-17.
Okay, cool. This is the first time we've had a little bit of difference.
A little bit margin.
I mean, not that much, but yeah, I'm going 49-24.
All righty, that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. Oh, you're looking at me because you need to do your wrap-up.
No, I'll do my outro. It's Pac-12 conference, the last time we're starting this season opener in the conference play. I'm excited, had a blast being around USC football again. Hopefully, for all our new listeners, hopefully you enjoy the show. For all our constant listeners, thank you guys so much. And obviously getting the sponsor and all that, you guys made it possible. So we will see you Saturday in the Coliseum. Let's pack the house. I love you guys. Fight on. I'm out.
You wrapped it up, Cody. That's going to be it for us. That's Cody. I'm Keely. We'll see you on Sunday for the Dion Recap show, and then we'll be back for the bye week.
Yeah, bye week episode.
Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up. See you next time.